Welcome. Today, I'm going to talk to you about that feeling you have when somebody says you should celebrate your wins. And what you do is kind of internally roll your eyes while simultaneously freaking out because it feels so stressful. Um, I'm Missy Hughes. I'm a productivity coach, and I teach you how to use even that kind of eye rolling grumpiness to when your motivation feels like it's out there creating somebody else's wins. Um, I'm going to help you use that so that you can end your day feeling proud instead of stressed. So, subscribe to this channel and use the link in the comments to sign up for a free consultation so you can look at what it looks like to create those wins and celebrate them in your life. So, I think of celebrating wins in two ways. I think of like a big project, like for instance, I used to be a spa director, and every year we would do a budget, and every month we would do a forecast. So you're looking at all the money for all the things that you're going to be bringing in, and that it's going to be paid out, and you're making predictions essentially, right? So when I would finish that project, I would always look back on it. And it's that looking back on it, that point that we want to talk about today. And then there's also, so keep that in mind when you have a big project. And then there's also just your day to day where you get to make decisions on how your day is going to go, what task you're going to undertake, and then you look back at the end of the day. So at the end of the budget, I would always look back with this flood of like stress. It was over, which felt amazing, but it was over, which felt like, oh my gosh, I didn't do enough. I didn't do it right. I didn't put enough energy. I didn't put enough time into it. I didn't have enough time to put into it. I don't know. I don't know that I even have the skills to do it the way it should be done. I don't know if somebody else could have done it better. It definitely, why would I celebrate? These are the thoughts that used to go through my mind. And sometimes, listen, depending on where my frame of mind is, you may relate to this too, where the initial thought we have when we look back on something we accomplished is it wasn't enough. I didn't do it right. I didn't do it well. And so when someone says you should celebrate your wins, celebrate your accomplishments, we have thoughts like, why would I celebrate? It was a terrible effort. I can't waste time celebrating. I'm behind on so many other things. If I celebrate, I'm claiming that I did it well, and I don't believe that I did it well. What would I even do to celebrate? What does that even mean? If I celebrate a bad job, if I celebrate subpar performance, then that would incentivize me to keep giving subpar performances. Um, if I stop to celebrate, I'm not moving forward. I don't deserve to celebrate poor performance. There may be certain variations of these thoughts for you. You may be like, yes, I'm all in on all of those. Or you may think, wow, Missy, you're really hard on yourself. True, true. This is a task that I have worked on all my life is, wow, you're really hard on yourself. How can we solve this? So these are celebrating your wins is a way. These are my unconscious thoughts. They might be yours too. These are the ones that happen just by chance in the 60,000 thoughts that I have in a day. These are the ones that come out about projects when I'm not thinking specifically. So, when you're in that spiral of thoughts, you may experience feelings like embarrassment, ashamed, disappointed, frustrated, overwhelmed, rushed to get to the next thing, or anxious. just to name a couple. And when you're in that flurry of really tough emotions, some of the things that come out of that are you think in circles, repeating those same stinky thoughts that make you feel terrible. You focus on your shortcomings, not on what you did well. You're looking around for what everybody else is thinking, and you're worrying about how they're judging you or how they're criticizing you. You rush around to try to make up for it. You do the next thing distracted by what you're thinking about how you did the project. You just did what you finished. So you're not present in either one. Um, you're not evaluating. So you're not looking at the specifics of what went well, what didn't go well, what will I do differently next time. You're not asking for constructive feedback. Like what's your impression of this? How could this improve? What went well about it? You're not identifying specific areas of growth or specific areas that you've already grown. You're not identifying skills that you're using or skills that you need to adapt and learn to get through this project better. So the result of these really harsh thoughts with these really uncomfortable feelings, and then these actions that you take in that discomfort is you stay stuck. You stay stressed about the project or your day. You stay not feeling proud and not celebrating. So, what do we do with that? How do you get out of this circle? So, I'm going to give you several ways that just things that you can start to bring your thinking to a different place. So, step one is before you even start a project. So, as you're going into your next thing, is to create some boundaries for the project. Create some bare minimum things like when I do this project, when I do this budget, I'm going to do the bare minimum that I can possibly do is this, and this. Um, that's going to tell you where you're failing, right? So if you don't do your baseline, under that you're failing, right? So when you know exactly how you're failing, it's easier to let go of the idea of failure. Oh, well, I'm getting these things done. I might want to do them better, but I'm not failing. Let's not call it failure, right? If you know where failure is, it's a lot easier to succeed. And then the look at the top level of like what would be the best case scenario here. Everything in between that baseline and that best case scenario is just a spectrum of success. This is like getting it done okay. This is getting done even better, and this is just killing it. I'm doing such a great job if I'm here. Right. And when you define that, you get clear and you're like, oh, I know what a 7 out of 10 looks like. I know what a 12 out of 10 looks like, right? It's clear because I guarantee you will very rarely claim a 10 out of 10 if you're not specific. So when you give yourself those boundaries before you start, okay, here's what failure looks like. Here's what success looks like. Now I'm going to go get to work. Then you get to find some wins to celebrate a little bit easier. Step two is look for what you like. This seems like not a productivity thing, but I will tell you when we're looking for what lights us up, when we're looking for like little things that make you happy, like the color or the sky or the weather or the time of day or some silliness of a coworker or whatever it is, when you look at things that make you happy, and you give yourself that task of let me look at this task. What about this can I connect with? What about this will I enjoy? What about this will I simply not hate? You can look at any spectrum of that too. You can look at when you give yourself that task to look for what you like, you will find it much more readily. When you're in the task, you'll be like, oh, this is what I identified. Oh, there's that color I love. Oh, there's that thing that makes me laugh. Oh, there's that this or that. And especially when you're looking at a day, like if you're just looking at the task in the day, it's so easy to find those little bitty things, just simple connections that you have that you can say, oh, I got to enjoy that today. What a win. Um, Step three is when you're looking back on a project or looking back on your day, look for decisions that you would make again. You can say, oh, for instance, the other day, this week, we usually walk to school and we decided we were perfectly capable of walking, but we decided to stay home, all kind of just relax in our timing and drive to school, which meant the dog still needed a walk. So we enjoyed a little bit of family time, but then the dog still needed a walk. So instead of walking the dog to school and having two things checked off at once, we went to the woods and walked with my dog. So even though that wasn't the most timely thing, I loved it. I loved it because I loved not being rushed in the morning. I loved it because I loved connecting with my family. I loved it because I loved being in the woods. And I got to see my dog with this ridiculous huge stick that she loved. And it was also fun. Right. So I would make those decisions again, not for the efficiency of my time, but for the pure enjoyment that I got out of the that series of events. So look for decisions that you would make again. Look for things that you're like, yeah, even if it wasn't perfect, even it wasn't like totally smooth, oh, but I still like the reason I made that decision and I would make that decision again. Um, what that's going to tell you is what you're valuing. When you're looking at like, oh, this or that, I don't know if you've ever played this game. Would you choose mountains or ocean, this or that? And you get to just like play. And my son likes to make it super gross things. So you get to decide where you're leaning. What? Oh, I'm a little bit more this way, a little more that way. When you look at the decisions you're making in your day, where are you being specific about where you're connecting to your values in the day? There's so much of our time that we're not like, tick, 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 I'm following this value and I'm doing this activity. We don't necessarily do that. We just do what we do. But when you look back and you look at your decisions and you can see, oh, I would make that again, then it's so much easier to see what you're connecting to, what values are leading you. Um, Number four, you can identify something that you can see just a tiny bit better way of doing it. Aim for 1% better, not like knocking it out of the park next time. If you're always looking for the home run, you're going to be trying so hard and usually get pretty frustrated. In baseball, it's not a home run every hit. You're looking for base hit, base hit, base hit, gets the runs around the diamond. Um, so if you're aiming for just 1% better, that can look like um, what are tiny details of what you could do differently? I'm going to start dinner 5 minutes early. These are things that I think about. I'm going to start um, asking for my son's opinion to get him engaged in what we're doing, just to get a conversation started. I'm going to turn on music to help the task flow a little bit better. I'm going to think about what is my favorite day to do, what time of day to get certain things done. When I'm writing, I like that to be first thing because that's when I feel the most clear. So for those are just little ways. How can I do it just a little bit differently to make it just a little bit better, to flow just a little bit easier, maybe flow a little smoother, maybe make me a little bit happier? All of those things, focusing on those tiny increments can help you figure out where your wins are, and then you start celebrating them. The next thing, number five, is to notice how you've gotten 1% better. So look at the ways that you were like, oh, I used to do it this way and now I do it this way. That's such a better way for me. I love that I've made that change. You often won't, it's like you don't see yourself growing. You don't see those changes unless you're looking for them. So go looking for them. And the last number six is find one way that you can make something easier for tomorrow. Maybe it's, I set something out that I'm going to need. Maybe it's repacking something that I'm going to have to take. Maybe it's just anything little, anything tiny, even a thought of like when the alarm goes off, I'm going to practice the thought I get to go do this first thing in my day instead of I have to get up. I get to get up to go do this first thing that I enjoy. So what is one way? If you start focusing on that one way that you can make something easier for yourself, then you get to look back and say, oh, I did this 1% better today. You get to start creating the wins that then you're celebrating. And I want to tell you, celebrating, we often think about as like champagne popping and whistle, horns blowing and all the rah rah, or like a pat on the shoulder, or like I got to go celebrate with a massage or celebrate with a drink. Celebrating can be as small as acknowledging. I acknowledge that this happened. I acknowledge that this went well. I acknowledge that this didn't go well. That's actually a celebration because you're looking for ways to then improve it. Listen, the more specific we get in very tiny ways, the easier it is to celebrate through acknowledgement. And that acknowledgement goes so much farther than like a fake pat on the back, right? It's like I have this client, and I always go back to this. She's always said, don't tell me to give myself a hug. She was always afraid that I was going to tell her that. And I'm like, I don't, it's not even on my list of things to suggest to you. Never will be. But, she was always afraid that self-care meant giving herself a hug. And we often have these ideas that like celebrating has to be like this thing. But when you don't feel like giving yourself a hug, it feels so cheesy. When you don't feel like celebrating, it feels so cheesy. So go to this place where you start by acknowledging, and then you get to decide how it grows from there. So I look forward to seeing your comments. Tell me in the comments what felt most meaningful to you about this idea of celebrating and how to find it. And I look forward to seeing you next week.